She was still a teenager when she started beating professional adults at one of the most physically punishing motorsport competitions in the country. And yet somehow, the most surprising thing she ever did was quietly step back from the camera that made her famous. That is the Katelynn Boren story. Not the version people assume, and not the one the comment sections have been building out of speculation for the past year. The real one, the one that starts in the Utah desert when she was 11 years old and her father handed her the keys. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the record actually shows, why her face started appearing less on one of YouTube's most beloved channels, and why the answer tells you something important about what it costs a young woman to build a name in a world that wasn't built with her in mind. Hurricane, Utah sits in the southwest corner of the state, far enough from Salt Lake City that most people have never heard of it, close enough to Zion National Park that the red rock landscape feels like it goes on forever. It is not a place people think of when they think about YouTube fame. It is not a place that produces influencers. It produces people who know how to drive. Katelynn Boren discovered rock crawling more than 2 decades ago, a sport where a driver and a spotter work together to navigate an extreme off-road vehicle through a coned course on terrain that would destroy a normal truck. The key phrase there is driver and spotter. You need 2 people. And for years, Kevin struggled to find a consistent partner who could keep pace with the way he competed. When his daughter got old enough, he made a decision that most parents would not have. He put her in the driver's seat. He moved to spotter. Katelynn Boren took her first turn behind the wheel of an off-road vehicle when she was 11. She was not learning to drive in a parking lot. She was learning on trails in southern Utah, in vehicles built for terrain that punishes every mistake immediately and without mercy. By 14, she was competing in national events against full-grown adult men, not just competing, finishing at the top. She described the experience plainly in one of her early interviews. She said she had a really good teacher. She said it was stressful when she first got on the course, that the clock started and you had 10 minutes and you had to worry about every gate and every cone, while her father sprinted around the vehicle, making sure she was getting through clean. And then she said something that told you everything about who she was going to become. She said, as she got the hang of it, it became a lot more fun. It was something she looked forward to. She loved being on the course. That is not the language of someone doing it for attention. That is the language of someone who found their thing. And here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. Rock crawling is not well known outside the off-road community, and that is worth understanding before anything else, because it explains the world Katelynn was already operating in before most of her YouTube audience had any idea she existed. The Rock series, Western Rock Crawling, runs competitive events across the American West. Drivers are divided into classes based on their vehicle's capability and the driver's experience level. At the bottom is Sportsman C, the entry-level class for people just getting into the sport. At the top is Pro Mod. The gap between those 2 classes is not measured in experience. It is measured in vehicle builds that cost tens of thousands of dollars, reaction times measured in fractions of a second, and courses that will flip a purpose-built competition buggy if the driver reads the terrain even slightly wrong. Katelynn started in Sportsman C. She drove a Cherokee XJ, a platform most off-road enthusiasts know, a capable and beloved vehicle, but not a purpose-built competition machine. She moved up. Then she moved up again. In September 2021, during a national competition, she took a bad line. The XJ went off a 30-foot cliff and rolled. Anyone watching would have stopped breathing. The vehicle was totaled. Katelynn walked away without injury. Her response was not to step back from the sport. Her response was to build a proper Pro Mod buggy, a JHF and GOAT-built machine, and enter competition at the highest class on the circuit. By the time she began appearing on Matt's Off-Road Recovery regularly, she was not a young hobbyist. She was a sponsored Pro Mod competitor, with a vehicle built to win at the elite level of her sport. The sponsor list she was carrying when the Off-Road Vixen's profile featured her tells that story precisely. Warren Industries, Maxxis Tires, Raceline Wheels, GOAT Built, Yukon Gear, ORI Struts. Over a dozen brands attached to a teenager from Hurricane, Utah, because she had already built a reputation that made those relationships make sense. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. To understand how Katelynn's story became visible beyond the rock crawling community, you need to understand the channel that amplified it. Matt Wetzel spent 12 years in the roofing industry before he ever became a YouTube personality. 10 of those years as an employee, 2 as a co-owner. He sold his share, walked into a local towing company's assets, and started Red Ryder Towing. In 2013, he acquired Winder Towing, the name under which he still operates today. He spent another decade doing conventional towing before, in 2019, he started filming what he actually did for a living. The channel took off for a simple reason: watching stuck vehicles get unstuck from genuinely dangerous terrain, solved by a calm man with an unusually creative mind for recovery, turned out to be exactly what a significant portion of the internet wanted and didn't know it. The production started on an iPhone. The format never got complicated. Matt just kept filming, kept recovering, and the audience kept growing. By the time Matt's off-road recovery crossed 1 million subscribers, then passed 1.9 million, it had become something rarer than a popular channel. It had become a genuine community, the kind that follows a cast of characters, rather than just a subject matter. Fans knew Matt's wife Jamie, his sons, the 85-year-old Ed, who had been living on the property since before Matt bought it. They knew Lizzie, who eventually moved on. They knew Rudy, and they came to know Katelynn. Matt met Kevin and Katelynn Boren through the rock crawling competitions he was connected to in southern Utah. The introduction made immediate sense. He ran a recovery operation in terrain where rock crawling happened. She was one of the most capable young drivers in the sport. When she started appearing in videos, the audience response was immediate. A teenage girl who could read a rock face better than most adults in the frame. That was compelling. Not as a novelty, as actual skill. But here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. What most of the Matt's off-road recovery audience saw was Katelynn, the crew member, the young woman on a recovery team, doing a job in a real business, capable, confident, worth watching. What the off-road community saw was something different. They saw a pro-mod competitor who had worked her way up through 3 competition classes, survived a 30-foot cliff crash, rebuilt with a purpose-engineered buggy, collected a sponsor roster that most adult male competitors never reach, and was winning at the elite level of the sport. They saw someone who had competed in the Winter 4x4 Jamboree circuit, the Desert Roads and Trails Society events, and W-Rock rounds that draw competitors from across the western United States. And they saw something else that most people in either audience missed entirely. She had also competed as Miss Hurricane. That detail is worth sitting with for a moment, because the same young woman who was taking 60-degree approaches in a pro-mod buggy, calculating ground clearance and line angles on terrain designed to break vehicles, was also a local beauty queen, representing her hometown in a formal capacity. Hurricane, Utah is a small enough place that those two things existed in the same life, without contradiction. But it illustrated something about who Katelynn Boren actually was, someone whose identity was never fully captured by any single frame anyone put around her. The re-rock competition she won in Cedar City in December 2024, taking first place in the Pro-Mod shootout, ahead of multiple competitive adult teams, happened after the period when fan commentary about her reduced appearances on Matt's channel had already started. She wasn't stepping back from anything, she was winning. She never talked about this publicly, until now. By early 2025, a pattern was appearing that anyone who tracks YouTube communities would recognize immediately. Third-party commentary channels started producing videos with titles like, "Is Katelynn leaving Matt off-road recovery?" and "What happened to Katelynn from Matt's off-road recovery?" Videos that were generating significant view counts, which meant the demand for that question was real. By February 2026, a channel posted a video specifically titled, "Why Did Katelynn Boren Disappear from Matt's Off-Road Recovery?" By March 2026, another had published, "What Really Happened to Katelynn Boren from Matt's Off-Road Recovery?" The pattern was consistent across more than a year. Fans noticed a change in frequency, wanted an explanation, and no official explanation had been provided. That absence of explanation is not the same as drama. It is worth being clear about that distinction, because the comment sections of those videos filled the gap with speculation that wasn't supported by anything on the record. No one reported a conflict. No one reported a termination. Katelynn's LinkedIn profile continued to list Matt's off-road recovery as her current employer. She made no public statement of departure. What the record does show is a young woman in her late teens and early 20s navigating something that young people with growing public profiles often navigate badly, but that Katelynn appeared to navigate quietly. Her identity and her competitive career were expanding. The channel, as she had originally appeared in it, was one node in a network that was getting larger. Matt's channel had also navigated its own difficult period. In late 2021, he was charged with a second-degree felony for insurance fraud related to his towing company, Winder Towing. Specifically, allegations that the company had filed more than $15,000 in inaccurate claims with AAA over roughly an 18-month period from 2019 into 2020. He entered a no-contest plea, received 18 months of probation, and repaid more than $17,000. He kept uploading, the channel kept growing, but the environment around the channel in that period was different than the one Katelynn had entered. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. The Crazy KS Instagram account, Kevin and Katelynn Boren's shared handle, sits at over 51,000 followers. The bio describes them plainly: father-daughter team, goat-built JHF buggy, WERA competitors, Southern Utah. There is a discount code for RTech Industries, a discount code for Yankum, brand relationships negotiated independently of any YouTube channel. That number, 51,000 followers, is significant context. It means that whatever the trajectory of her appearances on Matt's off-road recovery, Katelynn had been building a separate audience in the off-road community that was substantial, engaged, and growing on its own terms. She wasn't disappearing. She was bifurcating, the way any creator does when their interests pull in more than one direction at once. The sponsorship infrastructure she had assembled told the same story. Warren Industries doesn't put its name on someone based on a YouTube appearance. Maxxis Tires is one of the most recognized brands in competitive off-road for a reason. Goat Built is known specifically within the W-Rock and rock crawling community as a builder of serious competition vehicles. Those relationships reflected a competitive identity that had been built over years of sustained performance, not borrowed from someone else's platform. What that means concretely is that Katelynn Boren's relationship with Matt's off-road recovery was probably always going to evolve, not because of conflict, not because of a dramatic exit, but because she was never exclusively a channel crew member. She was a sponsored pro-mod competitor who also appeared on a channel. The channel made her more visible to a general audience. The competitive career gave her a foundation that didn't depend on any single channel to survive. Young women in male-dominated spaces rarely get to define the terms on which they're recognized. The sport of rock crawling, dominated at its highest levels by adult male competitors, was a space where Katelynn had earned her position through results. She won. She kept winning. The 2024 Pro Mod Shootout in Cedar City is on record. The results speak for themselves. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Matt's off-road recovery is not a channel with a stable, unchanging cast. That is not a criticism. It is simply accurate, and it matters for understanding what happened with Katelynn specifically. Lizzie, who had become a beloved fan favorite, left the channel around mid-2023 to become a rancher. She moved. Life changed. The audience mourned it and moved on. Rudy, another recurring presence, had periods of reduced involvement. Ed, the 85-year-old who had been living on the property since Matt first bought the shop, remained a constant. The channel absorbed these transitions because the core of it, Matt's personality, the recovery operations, the terrain, didn't depend on any single crew member to function. Katelynn's trajectory followed a similar pattern, but with additional dimensions. She was younger than Lizzie when she joined, with a competitive career that had its own demands: event schedules, travel, vehicle preparation, sponsor obligations. Those demands don't pause for a filming schedule. They don't bend around a YouTube calendar. When Katelynn was at a W-Rock event in Cedar City, she wasn't on camera in Hurricane. That is not a departure. That is a schedule. The she really left framing that the internet kept reaching for was looking for a rupture where the evidence suggested something more ordinary and more interesting. A young athlete at the beginning of what could be a long career in a sport she clearly loves, managing the demands of that career alongside whatever role she continued to play at Matt's operation. Her LinkedIn still says Matt's off-road recovery. Her competition record keeps updating. Neither of those things is a contradiction. They are two parts of the same person. One phone call, one conversation. That's all it took to change the direction of everything. And in Katelynn's case, the conversation that mattered most was probably the one she had with herself about what she wanted her career to actually look like. When Off-Road Vixens profiled Katelynn during her time as a 16-year-old competitor, they asked her a direct question about where she hoped to be in the future. Her answer was simple. She said she hoped she was continuing to do what she loved. That is easy to read as a generic teenage answer. It is also, viewed from the position of someone who had already competed at multiple class levels, survived a serious vehicle crash, rebuilt with a better machine, and assembled a sponsor roster that most adult competitors never reach. A statement of someone who already knew exactly what doing what I loved meant. It wasn't performing for a camera. It wasn't being recognized at a YouTube meetup. It was being on a course. It was the 10-minute clock, the gates, the terrain. Her father sprinting around the frame making sure she was reading the line right. That is what she was building toward. That is what the record shows she has been doing. She also offered words of wisdom to other young women who might be interested in the sport. She told them to be their most favorite version of themselves. She told them not to forget to smile, and she told them not to forget who helped them get to where they were. That last part is worth noting because it suggests that however Katelyn's presence on Matt's off-road recovery has changed in frequency or form, she is not the kind of person who burns bridges. The relationship with Kevin, with the rock-crawling community, with the sponsors who believed in her early, those relationships appear intact. The way she talked about them suggested she understood their value in a way that goes beyond a social media following. The Katelynn Boren story is not one that ends with a departure. It's one that keeps going, on courses that most people watching from the outside will never see directly, in a sport that demands everything she described: attention, precision, a willingness to send it over terrain that wants to destroy you, and the composure to do it again when it does. What Katelynn Boren's story actually reveals is something quieter and more durable than any dramatic exit. Sometimes the people who grow the fastest are the ones who were already in motion before the audience found them. She didn't need Matt's off-road recovery to become a recognized competitor. She was already winning before most viewers knew her name. What the channel gave her was visibility to a different audience. And as her competitive profile continued to grow through 2024 and 2025, her schedule, her sponsors, and her own ambitions naturally pulled her in directions that a single YouTube channel's filming calendar couldn't fully contain. Her competition results continue. Her father is still her spotter. The goat-built buggy gets taken to courses where the stakes are real, the clock runs, and the audience is the off-road community that has been watching her compete since she was 14. That is not a step back. That is the career she said she was going to have. The question worth asking now isn't what happened to Katelynn on that channel. It's where the competition record takes her over the next few years, and whether the mainstream audience will be paying attention when she gets there. Do you think Katelynn was right to let her competitive career take priority, or should she have stayed more visible on the channel that introduced her to millions? Drop your take below.